Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and boy, do I have a love-hate relationship with Amazon television series, Amazon originals. On the one hand, you've got very original, non-agenda-driven shows like Chris Pratt's The Terminal List or the new Reacher show, ones that don't care about woke agendas and slapping you in the face with messages and doubling down on how important the show is because of diversity, and that's awesome. On the other hand, you've got woke garbage like The Boys, which takes, in my opinion, the greatest non-Marvel or DC comic series of all time, and tramples all over the source material, filling it with ideologies and propaganda that seem to only benefit one side of the aisle, instead of being a satire of pop culture and media as a whole, regardless of what side you fall on. And then, of course, we have the blasphemy that was The Rings of Power. This show can't stay out of the headlines, which is why we're covering another article on it. From bounding into comics, Amazon executive Vernon Sanders doubles down on diversifying Middle-earth for The Lord of the Rings of Power Season 2. Yes, because that is what we need. Absolutely more diversity and doubling down on what you think are good calls instead of just respecting the source material and giving fans what they want. Look, I don't want to come out and say there's inherently something wrong with diversity in film or diversity in any sort of artistic or creative medium. Diversity is fine when diversity services the story. If you're just using it as a way to check boxes and pat yourself on the back and make yourself look good on Twitter, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If I was going to make a Yakuza film, I'm gonna hire all Japanese, or at least a majority Japanese cast, because, yeah, that's what would make sense for a Yakuza film. You'll want kind of a homogenous race, because that's what would service the story. If I was to make a Yakuza film, but one cast member was Japanese, and one was black, and one was Latino, that doesn't make sense for a Yakuza story. Considering Yakuza is the Japanese mafia, and about 99% of the population of Japan is Japanese. That's kind of the problem we run into with Rings of Power, is the diversity didn't feel organic. It felt like they would just need to check boxes so that they could say, we're righting the wrongs of the past. Peter Jackson's movies had almost no people of color in it, so we want to make sure that we are being better and that we're showing you that we understand that diversity is important. Diversity is only important if you make it important. And what I mean by that is if you're doing it for the right reasons versus the wrong reasons, like I established previously. So let's go through this article and see what they have to say about diversity in their new Lord of the Rings Season 2, which will probably get even worse numbers than Season 1, because now that people have seen Season 1, they probably won't want to come back. Amazon Studios executive Vernon Sanders recently stated that the second season of The Lord of the Rings of Power will double down on the first season's diversification of Middle-earth through its casting. In a brief interview with Deadline's Nelly Andriva, Sanders was asked, "From the Season 2 cast edition announcements so far, it appears you're continuing to bring diversity to Middle-earth. Can you speak about that and tease more familiar characters from the lore that we can expect?" He responded, "The series continues to be cast from all around the world. We think that represents the show that we created in Season 1, and we're doing the same thing for Season 2. We're trying to find the best actor for the role." Those two sentences are kind of antithetical to one another, though. If you're casting from all around the world, sure, that's fine, but you're not trying to find the best actor for the role if you were considering diversity as a key point. That's not how it works. The best actor for the role isn't just about acting talent. Don't get me wrong, that is a big component, but also how the character looks in relation to the source material. Think back to when they were making Harry Potter. Before the films were cast, they found Daniel Radcliffe, who looked remarkably like the description of the character in the books. If they had instead cast a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, slightly overweight individual for the role of Harry Potter, it doesn't matter how good his acting is. He would not be the best person for the role because he does not visually and aesthetically fit the role. You shouldn't just be changing things for diversity for the sake of diversity. If Middle-earth is mostly white, then most of your characters should be white, and that would make white actors who are good at acting the best for the role. Let's flip this on its head and talk about Black Panther. The role of Okoye, it doesn't take a lot for that role. I'm sure the actress that plays her is a good actress. I can't say I've seen her in too much else, if anything else, so I don't know. But I'm sure she's a fine actress. But the role itself is a pretty easy role. Anyone could do it. That being said, there are probably actresses better than her that could have done that role better. Part of her being best for that role was not only was she a good, capable, strong actress with a good physique and can perform action scenes, but she was black. Wakanda is an African nation that is homogenous, so all of its inhabitants are black. If she was out there acting, and you put her next to a white actress, and the white actress technically delivers the lines better, technically moves better, performs the boxing better, yeah, you could say, well, that person's the better actress, but we can't cast her because she's not the best actor for the role because she's white. And I'd be fine with that. It's not inherently racist to say, oh, they're not good for this role because they're black. They're not good for this role because they're white. If the role that they are trying to audition for has a particular ethnicity attached to it. And a lot of Lord of the Rings does. And then when you're making up brand new characters just to sort of fill a void or add depth or anything to that effect, yes, you can make the argument, oh, these are brand new characters, so we can make them of whatever ethnicity. But if that doesn't fit in with the source material or the overall world building that has been built, then that still doesn't make them the best for the role. Amazon didn't come up with Middle-earth. These writers didn't come up with Middle-earth. This is a pre-existing world that has already been built in story after story. To take your modern notions of what is and isn't acceptable and what is and isn't meeting quotas and applying it to a story that transcends time and will continue to transcend time, one, you're being disingenuous to your audience, the fans, the paying customers, and the actors who are effectively now only getting this gig because of the color of their skin, but you're also dating your show. Let's say in 10 to 20 years this phase of caring about woke diversity points goes away, and we actually start casting based on talent and who is best for the role, and realizing that we shouldn't be putting such an emphasis on skin color because that's an abhorrent racist practice. Basically, let's say things go back to like they were in the 90s. In 10 to 20 years, you try and pop on Rings of Power, it's going to be dated. We're going to remember, oh, do you remember that time in Hollywood where people were like, hey, we need to have 3 gays, 1 transgender, 5 blacks, only 1 white, and the white person needs to be the bad guy. Like, it's just, that's how it's going to look in a few years. And obviously that was an extreme exaggeration for emphasis, but that's what I'm getting at, is this is a very almost predatory practice in Hollywood that's not giving actors of color, in my opinion, their due, much like I was speaking about in the Little Mermaid video, because now there's always going to be that nagging question. Did they get it because they were truly the best at acting and because they fit that character, or did they get it because they're a diversity hire? And as someone who's not a minority in my own country, I can only imagine how much it would suck to have that sort of question lingering in the back of your head as you perform your job day to day, especially in what is effectively a gig economy when it comes to actors. That being said, let's move on with the article. We've already announced that there will be some characters from the lore. I don't think we've announced all of them, so there are surprises to come. I think the fans will really I think the fans will be really delighted, he asserted. Yeah. Look, no they won't. Real fans weren't delighted with Rings of Power. Even one of my buddies who was a staunch Tolkien guy was pretty meh about the show. He acknowledged the good things when they were there, but they were also few and far between. Real fans are very unhappy with the Rings of Power, I'd say about 85% of the time. Now, fans that are the type of individuals that champion diversity and woke writing and whatnot, yeah, of course they're going to say it's good, but they've been saying that's good about anything with diversity. So at that point, they're not fans of your writing style or your work or the blood, sweat, tears, and effort you put in to create something special, something artistic that will transcend time just as the original writings of Tolkien. They're fans of the business methods that you're using, that Disney is also using, that Warner Bros. Is also using, that Lucasfilm, which I know is part of Disney, but my point, is also using. If someone's going to be a fan of your work, you want them to be that, a fan of your work, not your business practice that is getting them likes and retweets on Twitter. Not only did Sanders reveal the show will continue to diversify Tolkien's Middle-earth through its casting, but he also tried to explain why the show hasn't been greenlit for a third season, despite claiming Amazon Studios is committed to 5 seasons. That's not happening. I wish that Amazon would go the Netflix route and then realize that, oh man, this isn't performing, just pull the plug, cut your losses. Sanders was specifically asked if he and Amazon Studios were still committed to showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay's 5-season plan for the series. Sanders responded, "We are absolutely committed. We have every reason to be excited. They've done a tremendous job." That remains to be seen, my friend. Look, there are shows where the first season starts off to a rocky start, and it gets better. Star Wars The Clone Wars is an example of that. But in the vast majority of instances, the shows start to go downhill the longer they last. Remember that TV show, that really famous one, what was it called? Lasted for 15 seasons, but only 5 of them. That's right, Supernatural. Supernatural started off amazing, and the first 5 seasons were pretty consistently great all the way up until the end. And that was where the show was supposed to end. Yeah, everything after Season 5, Seasons 6 through 15, minus a few episodes here and there, was a monstrosity and a shadow of its former self. Keeping a show going, you run the risk of alienating your audience further, running out of ideas, jumping the shark. And when you already had as abysmal of a Season 1 as what you got out of Rings of Power, you're going to have to do something to really wow your audiences and bring them back in Season 2, and hopefully also gain new audience in Season 2, because you're not going to make it to 5 seasons. People are going to give up, unless you just want to hemorrhage money so that you can continue to promote your message and then call people racist when they're not watching the show. I mean, I guess that's an option, but it seems like a losing strategy, and is that really the hill you want to die on? When talking about Season 2 of Rings of Power, we shouldn't be talking about casting and diversity. We should be talking about things that excite people, excite fans. You should be talking about maybe dropping hints for lore purposes. You should be talking about the stunt choreography and how it's being done. You should talk about the specific inspirations you're pulling from, the books or the stories. Basically, you should be talking about the property, the IP, not talking about diversity and all these other effectively buzzwords that fans don't care about. The media cares about it, for sure. News outlets, Twitter, they care about that sort of stuff, but they're not the ones keeping the show on the air. Fans of Tolkien are. And I don't want to hear the argument that, oh, well, if you're only making it for Tolkien fans, then you're not going to have a very large audience. No. In some instances, that may be a valid criticism. If something has got a very niche fan base, and then you go to adapt it, and you need to widen the audience, sure. But Tolkien is the cornerstone of all modern media fantasy. I mean, do you like D&D? Great, inspired by Tolkien. Do you like The Witcher? Great, inspired by Tolkien. Do you like Game of Thrones / House of the Dragon? Great, inspired by Tolkien. Tolkien fandom is arguably one of the biggest fandoms in the world. I am hard-pressed to find somebody who, if they haven't read the Lord of the Rings books, they've at least seen all the extended editions of the films, and 98% of them are going to have very positive things to say about them. Why is that not the same for your show? Because you're not treating it with the love and care that Tolkien fans want. And that's a massive fan base, because Tolkien fans aren't just the people that read the books and read the Silmarillion and have spent their time looking into the Second Age, even though there's not a whole lot known about it. No, a Tolkien fan can be somebody that just simply has watched the Jackson films, at least once or twice a year, every year, because it brings them comfort, and so they're excited to see more from that universe. It blows my mind when people try and pigeonhole Tolkien fans and they only bring up hardcore fans that know everything. You can be a Star Wars fan and have only seen the original trilogy. You don't need to have seen all, 11, 12, however many godforsaken films there are now, and only 6 are good. You don't need to have seen all of those movies to be a Star Wars fan. There's such a thing as casual fans. And I feel like that demographic is intentionally getting ignored in favor of promoting a demographic that cares about racist things like skin color instead of being true to good writing. However, despite this bluster of commitment, Sanders went on to state that the third season was not yet greenlit. It's a great question about Season 3. We're probably 2 or 3 months in on Season 3, but I think there could be news certainly in the new year. He then appeared to explain why the show hasn't been greenlit for Season 3 yet, despite the supposed commitment for 5 seasons. There's so much planning and prep that's necessary for us to get this mounted that the only reason we probably haven't gotten there quite yet is we've just been so heads down in Season 2, but I would expect there to be news in the new year. Okay, that to me seems, and I could just be wrong, it could just be how it's written, to me it seems like a way of avoiding the question. If you've committed to 5 seasons, yeah, I get it, you're working on Season 2, but Season 3 should already be greenlit if you're committed to 5 seasons. At this point, Seasons 1 through 5 should be greenlit if Amazon's committed to it. The fact that they are not greenlit, to me it doesn't sound like they're actually committed to it, but they can't say they're not committed to it because then that'll drive viewers away. If viewers think there's even an inkling of a possibility of the show being canceled, then what incentive do they have to keep coming back? Frankly, I'm going to use Supernatural as a reference again. Man, if you're one of those that started watching Supernatural when it hit Netflix, screw you. You didn't know what it was like to live in fear of that show being canceled. It didn't take off in popularity until about season 6 or 7, and I've been watching the show since season 1. And for seasons 1 through at least 4, every single season, we lived in fear of it getting canceled because it had no marketing. The gal that was the head of the CW at the time couldn't stand the show. You couldn't go into Hot Topic and buy Supernatural t-shirts. You could either get them online from the official Supernatural website or get them at Supernatural conventions, which at the time were incredibly small and relatively cheap compared to what they are now. Or you could screen print your own. That was it. So, yes, I remember living in fear of my favorite show at the time being canceled and wondering if it was worth it to come back. Now, I always did come back because I loved the show. I get why others wouldn't if they just didn't know it would be coming back. So yes, Amazon can't run the risk of driving viewers away by instilling that fear that they won't get a 3rd season. But when you're saying Season 3 isn't greenlit yet, but you're saying that you're committed to 5 seasons, that's a mixed message, and people aren't stupid. They're gonna pick up on what that means. Sanders' comments should come as a surprise. Amazon Studios insulted and denigrated fans who wanted casting consistent with Tolkien's writings and the lore he created for The Lord of the Rings. That's exactly right. They did. They did this from the onset of their marketing for the 1st season at the beginning of this year when they used Vanity Fair to run a smear campaign against Tolkien fans. Yes, they did that as well. Look, I'm not exactly a diehard Tolkien fan myself. I love the Jackson films, and books. I'm not a big fan of the books. I love The Hobbit. I think The Hobbit's one of the best books ever written. I don't really care about the Lord of the Rings books themselves, one way or the other. They're fine. I myself do much prefer the Peter Jackson films, mainly because there's no Tom Bombadil. Jokes aside, I couldn't stand the Silmarillion. It felt like reading a freaking encyclopedia instead of a narrative. I mean, because that's basically what it is. So no, I'm not the most diehard Tolkien fan, but I love the book The Hobbit, and I love the Jackson films, and I respect the community, even if it's one that I'm only on the outset of, and I want them to have as great a time with their experiences as I have with things that I love. When Dragon Ball Super came back, I loved it. Wasn't a big fan of the first 2 arcs, just being rehashes of films, but from about arc 3 and on, I loved Dragon Ball Super. I've loved the films. As somebody who hadn't seen new Dragon Ball material since the end of Dragon Ball Z for a long stretch of time, it was great that that came back and that fandom got to come back together and experience what would go on to be something great. You know, you could use the same argument for something else I'm a massive fan of, Resident Evil. After Resident Evil 4 and 5, fans were pretty much jumping off the Ecliptic Express. Definitely 5 got panned pretty hard despite being the most successful financially. 6 effectively bombed. And then they did a bunch of spin-offs that got pretty mixed reception. And then they made Resident Evil 7. And it brought so many old fans back. It worked. And these people that had been on the fence or had stepped away from Resident Evil for 5, 6, 10 years, whatever, they were back in the fold again and they were enjoying it. And me as part of that fandom and seeing others in that fandom, I was happy to see them back. I was happy to be back. That's what Tolkien fans want. And even if I'm only on the outskirts of the Shire, I want to see all those in the Shire having a blast, having the time of their lives with new Tolkien material. And that's not what Amazon gave them. In fact, Amazon smeared them and trashed them as being a bunch of white supremacist racists who couldn't get with the times and are so upset about seeing black hobbits, when that's not what Tolkien fans are upset about. So no, when Season 2 comes out, don't give it a chance. Don't forget what they did to you and what they called you. And basically, do everything in your rings of power to make sure that they are not greenlit for Season 3. Hey, post-video editing Leon here. Just wanted to let you know that before I go into my normal outro, this was actually a much longer video. When all was said and done after editing, it was almost 40 minutes, and that's because this is a much longer article that I do really recommend you go and read. You know, it's abounding in the comics. But the vast majority of the rest of the article were reminders of the things Amazon had done to fans, the way they trashed them, the way they called them abhorrent names, and basically turned the fandom on the show. While it's all very good material, and while I definitely think it merits a read, I don't know that I want to give you guys an additional, 20 more minutes of just recapping what we have all seen and heard a million times. That's why I think I'm going to actually cut it here. I can't stress enough, read the article, and continue listening to my outro because there is a bit of additional information I do think is important to hear. But yep, post-editing Leon out. Thank you, sorry. Well, that was an incredibly long article, and while yes, only the first few paragraphs had to do with Season 3 and being greenlit and whatnot, I found it enlightening to read through the whole thing because while I was following all this as it was happening a year ago, a year and a half ago, effectively since the show's inception, it's nice to be reminded of all these heinous, awful things that Amazon has said and that Amazon did, so that we can keep it in the mind of the people who go to watch this show, especially when Season 2 comes out, and they can sit back and be like, oh right, Amazon did call us racist, sexist, homophobes. Maybe I shouldn't watch this. They made a big scene a week or two ago about how they are now going with all female directors for Rings of Power Season 2, as if that's what the show needs. Look, when you're focusing on these immutable characteristics, things that can't be controlled, and then you want to use these immutable characteristics and weaponize them against what are supposed to be your paying customers because you feel like you have a built-in shield, you're evil. There's no other way to put it. You are the Sauron of your own story, and you want to be your own fictional version of Galadriel, the warrior queen. It's an absolute mess, and I just genuinely hope that when Season 2 comes out, all of you know the score, and you don't watch the show. Don't even hate watch it, because Amazon wants those numbers. Sit back and say, nope, I'm not going to watch it. I get that means I don't get to have an informed opinion on it, but I don't want to support a company that treats fandom this way. And go from there. That being said, if you're still around at this point in the video, I would love the subscription. Please hit subscribe. It would mean the world to me because this was a lot and I put myself through it for you. Also, like and comment. Give me your thoughts down in the comments below and follow me on Twitter at BoltTheWord because this has been Words of Paradise.